Olga Nefedova, you're an art historian, associate professor at the National Research University in Moscow. You are former director of the Orientalist Museum in Doha, Qatar. You worked with private and government collections and museums in the Far East, South Africa, the Middle East, and the Gulf countries. And you are the author of A Journey into the World of the Ottomans, published in 2009. And for this panel, we'll be discussing your current research, Art and Artists Crossing Borders, the early history of art education for Arab students in the Soviet Union between 1959 and 1979. So my first question is, what attracted you to this research? And can you describe the process that you choose to conduct this research in terms of access to the archives, books, and sources?
Good afternoon, Arthur. Thank you very much for inviting me to talk about my research. What attracted is the mystery, first of all, yeah? And the absence of any information about this artist or any information about this history in various books dedicated to Arab modern art, the art of the 20th century. And it always puzzled me, how could this happen? I knew that there were at least two. Yeah, there were two women I knew, and I know them personally, Thoraya Baktami and Afifa Alebi. And but what about the rest? And it's impossible that there were only two, and where are the rest of them? Because I know that the exchange program for foreign students in the USSR was extremely active. If I'm not mistaken, between the end of the 40s until 1991, there were more than 500,000 of foreign students in the USSR. So it's impossible that there were only two Arab artists that actually graduated. And when I got an opportunity, when I came back to teach in Russia, it means I got access to various archives, and it's quite challenging in Russia because of certain problems of nothing is actually digitized, and nothing, it's, I mean, you really have to go there personal, you have to work with the original documents. And also I visited, of course, art institutes, not only the Surikov, but also the Stroganov Academy, and I will continue with the Repin Academy in St. Petersburg. And then I discovered that actually there were a lot of artists. And as of today, I can tell there were nearly 100 if we are talking about the Soviet period itself, until 1991. Yeah. And actually, this story grew bigger and bigger, and actually became much more than just those Arab artists that studied in the USSR. I would like to mention that there is a major research project with the Orient Institute Beirut and Max Weber Foundation, Relations in the Idioscape, Arab students in the Eastern Bloc. And it's a major and very important chapter in my case, in the history, in the art history, the Arab art history of the 20th century. So I'm really happy that I can contribute, you know, to this very important research, and to bring probably to life sometimes forgotten names, sometimes not very well known names. And yeah, so I guess we will talk about them today.
Yeah. So can you give us an overview of the context between the USSR and the Arab countries in the beginning of the 50s?
Beginning of the 50s, even close to mid 50s. Yes, if we are talking about politics, Soviet Union and Arab states, this is something else. If we talk about exchange program, then it was overall program to attract foreign students, preferably, of course, the Eastern Bloc. Yeah. Then we are talking about the pro-communist, pro-socialist, and so on countries, even capitalist countries. I mean, they were also included. So that was a major educational program. What were the goals of this program is something else, you know, to discuss. I'm sure there were also political issues included there, but I went through so many archival documents, and everywhere, at least this educational program, if I'm talking about art students, it was first and foremost a so-called soft power. The most important thing was to make sure that first you really upbring a generation of friends, yeah, real dedicated friends, friends of the Soviet Union, friends of the Soviet people, and that you give them education within the concept of realism, I would say, socialist realism, but at least realism. So to bring back, to develop this Russian school of realism, to take it back to their own homeland, and somehow through this art to influence the situation in these countries.
Yeah.
But you know, to create this community of friends of the Soviet Union, I would say that was the prime goal.
Yeah. And what was the place of the Arab world in the Cold War battleground?
You know, the relations were quite interesting. First of all, the Arab world is huge. Yeah, so we have to talk about each country in different, if we're talking 50s, 60s, 70s, and every country relation with the Soviet Union, it's a completely different story. So I would say they did, Arab states, it was so attractive, especially in the 50s, because of this mood, the liberation, revolution, the uprising, and so on in various states. So of course, the Soviet Union was welcoming this mood, was welcoming these movements, and was welcoming the students. And we know that, for example, with Syria, with Iraq, with Egypt, enormous amount of students, exchange students actually graduated, that came to the Soviet Union and later graduated. Little bit different story was, of course, with Algeria. I just want to concentrate on art students only, because like Algeria, we have, of course, Yemen was there, Palestinian students, but with different passports also joined. So yeah, these students were quite important. Arab states were important, I would say, quite important.
Yeah. What were the first artistic projects between the two geographical spheres, between the USSR and these countries? Because in one of your essays, you mentioned the year 1967, right? Starting July 1967.
Yeah, in 1957, the festival.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Festival of Youth and Students, actually, it's a quite important event in the history of the Soviet Union itself. So there are plenty of research and books dedicated to this event. It was an eye-opener, border opener, country opener, really major event when hundreds and thousands of foreigners came to the Soviet Union, and among them they were Arabs. And that was the first time, for the first time, when Soviet people could see Arab art, because Arab artists exhibited in this international exhibition dedicated to contemporary art worldwide. So they were Lebanese artists, there were Syrian artists, and so on. So yes, that was an eye-opener, and I did interview a few former students, Iraqi students that studied in the Soviet Union. They remember how they came in 1957 just to attend this festival and how impressed they were. And then, of course, exhibition exchange in exhibitions in the Soviet Union. And I was surprised to discover, I expected something else. To be honest, I expected Egypt to be extremely proactive, or even Syria, but I was really surprised to find out that the first art exhibition dedicated to one country was actually Lebanese. And it was in September 1957, and I was really surprised, but yes, it was Lebanese art. Then we have, of course, United Arab Republic, so-called, yeah, the short-lived organization that means Syria and Egypt. And there were not one exhibition, there were three different exhibitions. And then 1959, we have exhibition of Iraqi contemporary art. So these were again important events, definitely important events. They were well received in the Soviet Union. And again, Soviet people, for the first time, they learned that actually Arab art existed. I'm not talking about Islamic art, I'm talking about fine art. And that apparently Arab artists, if you remember from the article dedicated to Iraqi exhibition from my essay, that actually Iraqi artists were advanced, yeah, and that the Soviet artists should have learned from them because there was so much progress.
Mm-hmm. And between the 50s and the 70s, so as you said, some foreigner students were many to enroll at the Vasily Surikov Moscow State Art Institute. Can you introduce us this institution, and then we will talk about the Arab students who enrolled at this institution?
That was the first institute that received Arab art students, not the only one. There were a number of them, and but the Vasily Surikov one was the first with the largest number of students, actually, foreign art students and Arab art students, with the largest community. So yeah, I began my research with them, you know, with this one. The first two students, they arrived in 1958, because for the first at first every student had to study Russian language. The education was in Russian. So technically speaking, they arrived in 1958. They were both Syrians, although they arrived with United Arab Republic passports, but graduated already with. Yeah, they arrived with UAE. Sorry, United Arab Republic. It was Abdulmanan Shama and Milad Shab. But technically speaking, they enrolled in 1959. So from 1959, that's the year when the first Arab art students joined Art Institute in the USSR. And you are showing here the graduation work of Milad Shab, my motherland. Very interesting and talented artist. Unfortunately, he passed away. Yeah, and as far as I know from his son, he after his return back, he is from Malula. He became an icon painter, and he was painting a lot of various churches in Malula.
Yeah.
Abdulmanan Shama, until now, he's quite active. He was a student of Alexander Deineka, and he was studying monumental art. Milad Shab, it was easel painting, and Abdulmanan Shama, monumental art.
Yeah. And then we have this other Arab student who is Nazim
Irani, Lebanese ones, yeah, Nazim Irani and Wahab Tadini. Nazim Irani is a completely different story, and he's really very interesting. First of all, he came in summer 1957 to visit Moscow during the festival.
Okay.
And he participated, already young artist, he participated in that international art exhibition with just a few drawings, quite interesting drawings. When he came back he was really impressed with the Soviet Union, with the Soviet people. And when he came back to Beirut, he applied through the Soviet embassy. He wrote a letter where he described that he really wanted to go back, he really wanted to go and study art, and he got this scholarship through the Soviet embassy in Beirut. He was a student of Professor Tomsky, very famous Russian sculptor. Yes, he still was studying sculpture. He graduated with excellent marks, and I like him actually as an artist. Unfortunately, so far I have seen only one work that exists actually, because during 1970s his workshop in Lebanon and in Beirut was destroyed during one of the air raids, and all his works were destroyed, including this graduation work, Sorrow. Yeah, he graduated with the work Sorrow. So we know about this artist and about his art only based on archival material, based on those images, and only one work which I have seen live. I hope that his works are somewhere else. I know there are in the collection of the Ministry of Culture in in Lebanon, and I hope one day we'll be able to see his works.
Hopefully,
somewhere else. Yeah.
So you mentioned also,
speaking of the apples in the mountain, but the work is executed within the ideology of the socialist realism. Yeah, people are flowers, it's about labor, it's about spring, it's about celebrations, about harvest, but it's quite interesting work. I would say it's very interesting work.
And another artist, Asim al-Basha.
Asim al-Basha, already the generation of the students of the 70s. There was a certain break, and I think I can refer to political situation when relations with Iraq, of course, were not so good anymore, and so on. But then early 70s, students came back again, and Asim al-Basha was one of the Syrian artists who graduated in 1977 with very interesting work, Palestinian. Asim al-Basha is very active, and until now he lives and works in Spain now.
Can you say that there was a sort of change between these generations of students in terms of artworks, what they were producing during their studies?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I do divide them as much as I can, the students of the 60s and the students of the 70s. Yeah.
Okay.
If we talk about educational system, I would say in 70s it was a bit more restricted, more strict, yeah, because the professors, they were trying to make sure that students graduate with, if I may use the word, proper works, yeah, proper subject, proper works, just to make sure that it's all well done. And it's no, the subjects were my motherland, yeah, for example, my country, or liberation, uprising, revolution. That was quite well, not so popular, but still acceptable subject of national history, yeah, or the of, for example, traditional heritage, or sometimes even fairy tales or something like this, that would be accepted. In 1970s, it was more liberal already. We can see that there is political issue is not the most important. We can see a lot of other subject, a lot of other experiments already. So in the work of the 70s, there were more students also, yeah, not more students in the 70s, and they represented more countries. We have got not only this, what we already traditionally think, like Syria, Iraq, and Egypt, yeah. By the way, there were no Egyptian art students, only postgraduates. That's quite interesting. But in the 1970s, we're getting students from Bahrain, students from Kuwait, students from Saudi Arabia also. Yeah. So there were students from GCC countries as well as like Levant and so on. So yeah, the works of the 70s, I would say the variety is really quite interesting. Yeah.
But they have this common, I mean, the works were always kind of connected with their country or their own traditions and culture. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes. It's also quite interesting. Yeah, but they always tried to connect to their own national rhetoric, to their own national concerns and or questions or problems or issues. So every single work, I don't remember any work that would be, let me say, so irrelevant. Yeah, it was always something national. I also guess that they wanted the graduation works. They were quite important. Yeah, graduation work is a climax of all these relations and knowledge exchange and all this education. So they were always trying to do their best for the graduation work, because that was a product that they would bring home. So when they go home with their degrees, they're supposed to demonstrate something really high quality and something that would potentially be not only exhibited, but maybe would enter a national collection. Yeah, why not? I know that a few works actually, for example, graduation works of Iraqi students and even Syrian students, they became part of their national museum collections.
Mm-hmm.
That's why, unfortunately, in case of Iraqi students, these works are now missing after, the event. Yeah. So yeah, so I think I'm sure that they really dedicated a lot of effort and time and their knowledge to create something really significant, as a graduation work.
Yeah. And if I remember right, all of these Arab students, when they came back to their respective countries, they became teachers, right? Some of them.
A lot of them, yes, majority of them, and a few students actually they came back and continued their postgraduate education. Yeah, they got their degrees, postgraduate degrees. But a lot of them, yes, when they came back, because there was a shortage of professionals. And a lot of the students, if I look at this group of students, it's very difficult to create like a summary of all the students, because they were all different countries, different, and everything was quite different. But majority of them, they came from rural areas, yeah, or they came from villages and so on. So after graduation, they were expected to go back where they came from, and then continue spreading this knowledge and sharing it already with the locals. And we know that yes, there were a few of them that, for example, they couldn't even go back to the Soviet Union, like Nazim Irani. He couldn't complete his postgraduate studies because he was asked to teach in Lebanon. He was asked to become, yes, a teacher. So yeah, majority of them, they became professional artists and then became teachers in art institutions, schools, and so on.
Mm-hmm. So we know that some modern Arab artists travel to Europe, for example, Paris, Italy, or Rome, or even London. Why at that time these Arab students decided to go to the USSR instead of, going to European capitals,
I
like
did
their predecessors, I would say.
Yeah, I did ask them because I was also wondering, I mean, why Moscow, not Paris? I did ask them, and three main reasons. That's I can until now to give this summary that there were three main reasons. The first one is let us say political reason. Yeah, a number of students, although not majority, but a number of students, they were communists or pro-communists, and for them it was ideologically, spiritually important to go and study in the USSR because of the image of the country, because of the policies of the country, because of the picture that the USSR created, yeah, the ideology created around the world as a state that's built by people, controlled and governed by people, and so on. So for them, yes, it was quite important. They went there because they believed in this country and they believed in that system. Uh, Second reason, and it's also quite interesting, because in this struggle for students and this fight, yeah, for students, Soviet Union offered very good conditions.
Yeah.
Soviet Union did manage, yeah. The main condition is it was free education. Not only you could study for free, you were also getting a scholarship, stipend, sorry, and this stipend was quite good. It wasn't that bad, it wasn't luxurious, but it was good, and needless to say, it was twice as much as the Soviet students were getting. So there were certain privileges, yeah, there were certain allowances given to Arab art students to purchase warm clothes, for books, dormitory or hostel, they were receiving free accommodation. The Soviet Union was paying for their return home. And in addition, a lot of other activities. They traveled around the country, certain cities, they could visit certain cities for free. Everything was covered by the Soviet side. So the conditions were quite good. And for those students who came from rural areas, from poor family, from farmers and so on, or from of course they couldn't afford, they couldn't get scholarship to go and study in Paris. And for them, this was very attractive conditions and the choice was very good. So they were very eager and very keen to go to study in the Soviet Union. And then there was the last group, those who could afford to go anywhere, but they selected the Soviet Union because of their love of art, whether it was icon painting, performing art, we're talking about ballet, music, whether it was Russian art of the 19th century, even 20th century, memories of avant-garde, although of course. So they came because they were really fascinated by the art of this country and they decided to get their education there. So these were three main reasons.
Three main reasons. And during their stays and their study in the USSR, what were the impacts of the Soviet Union artistic trend and philosophy on their works at that time?
It's a huge subject, but I will just kind of indicate, because it's a very interesting topic. They had to study within the ideology of the socialist realism, because that was it. Yeah, that was in the certain books, the one they had to read, or it was, of course, realism. Realist art was the most important art. It was the highest form of any art. At the same time, those foreign students, they were privileged because every summer they could go home. So they traveled abroad. And not only they could go home, I know and I saw those permits because they had to get somewhat called exit permit. If you wanted to travel outside, they went to Paris, they went to Prague, they went to, I remember, Canada, I remember Vienna. So they also traveled abroad. So you cannot brainwash anyone if you cannot keep this person in isolation. So when people travel, they see the art of the others. They see that so many other movements and styles, and in their own homeland, they see, attend exhibitions and so on. So they got very good classical education. Academic education was very good one. If we are talking about other art movements, then again, they saw it outside, not in the Soviet Union, but they saw it outside when they traveled abroad. So in so many cases, I noticed that it blended very well. You get this academic education, which gives you very strong foundation, and that allows you really with confidence and freely to experiment with anything you want after that. And I saw very interesting examples, like again, Assam al-Basha. If you have a look at his current works, you will see that it's a completely different art language, which very interesting one, very interesting. He really developed, you see evolution, you see transformation, and I think this is what makes it so interesting in so many cases. Not every artist, there were a number of them that abandoned their art practices and just never continued for whatever reasons. Yeah. But those that actually develop their art and continue, they show very interesting results.
Yeah.